Super.
I think I'm good to go, Leo. So I'll give you a 10 count and then we can go live.
Yep.
10. Oh, you just got up and left. Hold on a second. The guest just left his station.
I wonder why he left.
Give him a minute.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day of the Kuwoo movement here. Our Turning Point podcast. Another Saturday. Today we will be doing something a bit different. My name is Leo Nupolu Johnson. I'm going to be your host today. I'm going to be alone today. Our youth panel is not here today, so it's going to be me one on one with a special guest from Liberia. But again, my name is Leo Nupolu Johnson, and I'm coming to you live from our studios here in Canada, Hamilton, Canada, to be very specific. Good morning. How are you feeling? Those of you who are just joining or watching the live, can you say good morning so we know that you're on? So we can be able to recognize you as well. And if you can do us a favor, that would be amazing if you can share the live so that other people who would love to join can be able to join on. We would be extremely grateful for that favor. But today, I'm with a very special guest. Many of you will either recognize the face or you've already met him or you know him. He's been very active in Liberia. Many ways, a scholar par excellence from one of the top universities in the world, a young Liberian who is doing his own thing in his own way. But we will hear from him. And so without wasting any time, I will bring in my guest so we can get the show going right away. But welcome, everybody. Shout out to those of you just joining. Say hello. We know you're here. Kuwoo Movement Kennedy. Good to see you as well. Welcome. And if you can share the live, that would be great. I'm here with my own brother and friend, Wantoe Teah Wantoe. This should not be a strange name to you on the Liberian scene. He's been very active, very, very active. He's a scholar, politically, he's active as well, leadership, and a whole lot of other things. But we will get to know him a little bit better. So without wasting any time, I will allow him to give his opening statement, introduce himself. For those of you who may not know who Wantoe Teah Wantoe is, here is your opportunity. So stay tuned. My brother, welcome. Good morning
Great.
from Canada.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leo. Good morning from Liberia. Uh, all the thing in the we'll talk about what you've done. It's beyond that. I was very optimistic for this conversation today because I'm a very huge fan of what you've done in Liberia. In fact, I'm having this call right now at the learning center that you led and designed here, which is a pragmatic space of leadership for Liberians. So my name is Wantoe. I'm currently doing my second master at the University of Oxford. I serve as the president of the Oxford Postgraduate. Uh, students, representing over 13,900 students reading PhD and masters at the University of Oxford. I'm also the executive director of Scholarly Path. Scholarly Path is an institution that promote pragmatic educational opportunities around the world to support Liberians who are desiring to be able to study out. Like you said, I'm also very actively politically engaged. I serve on the board of trustees of the AFS Intercultural Program, the largest intercultural program for educational advancement and across the world. And yeah, and so far so good. I'm a Liberian, and I'm very excited to be part of this incredible conversation with you.
Thank you so much. And my Liberian people, they like G's. So those of you who been wondering if the learning center are AI image, because somebody went on one of my posts and they were like, Leo, stop posting AI images. So if you think the learning center is an AI image that I post, Wantoe Teah Wantoe is sitting at the learning center having this conversation right
I'm
now. So
sitting.
just to give you
I'm
heads up.
sitting at the learning center. Yes, yes. People who think it's an AI image, they should buy that ticket and come Liberia.
Exactly.
Every day when you come here, you are very inspired. But the amount of Liberians that are having access to what you've done is very incredible. And for us as an institution, Scholarly Park, we are happy to have an office space here and to be able to benefit from the incredible, infrastructure and also external opportunity that this center provides.
Yeah. And just before going to our conversation, Wanto, since I got you on this topic, when I went to Liberia very early on to do this work, the one thing I learned in Liberia was that everybody told me it was not possible. Our leaders have gotten us to a place where even if somebody shows up with the best possible idea, the first thing you get to hear is that, oh, they think that Liberia, they play Dana America. And that idea you're bringing here, who know what Liberian people had to actually deal with. So I want you to just give me your own experience, because for me, it is one of the biggest challenges to even convince our people that they deserve better. In and of itself is a problem. So for me, I told people, the learning center, they're not voodoo. The Liberians build it. The Liberians managing it. And, they're nothing against the Chinese people, but they're not Chinese contractors. They're not foreign contractors there. If you've been there, you will see who's been there. So showing our people that these things are possible. We can come abroad, see better, experience better, benefit from better, and then we go back to Liberia and tell the people, say, oh, that Liberia is not possible. So just give me some of your own feedback with that kind of conversation.
It's true. It's actually a lot, and just like you have had a shared experience. Well, a lot of people assume that certain things are impossible to do. In fact, I would say, for instance, first of my credential, when we get into some sort of political conversation, the first thing people think about is, oh no, what's so much about your credential and so more. People, know some of the basic things, and sometimes I always write and say, when we provide our views on issues, the first thing you attack are things that you may not even be privileged to be able to do in the next 10 to 15 years. We need to be able to appreciate fundamental milestone regardless of differences. And and for me, I think it's very incredible what you've done, given the fact that people feel like this was an impossible journey. Today it is a milestone. And the only sad aspect is that we haven't learned from it yet. And it's very sad because we must be able to look at it, appreciate it, and see how we can be able to replicate it all across Liberia. Because this is the essence of building something as monumental as such. When I was contesting for the presidency of Oxford just a few months ago for the postgraduate at University of Oxford, a lot of people say, "Oh, this is impossible." In fact, when I posted my flyer on Facebook, someone like, "You don't want to waste our time and stuff." But I knew what I present as a candidate. I knew the years I've served in Oxford in different university roles was capable enough to justify my determination to become the president of the university. And one thing that I did not listen to was, the backsliding and the distractions and all those things. I kept moving forward. Today, the same very people who criticize my candidacy are the ones who were supporting, saying yes, we want to all those things. So it is a critical lesson that we all should be able to learn when we start uh, something very inspired to be able to lead. Distraction will always be at the forefront of it. And I guess your story of how you navigated from that lens. I'll be very happy to listen how you did not listen to distractions when you begin this learning center that we are currently in.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for your reflections on that as well. So let's get into it. By the way, to be very clear, this has been my opinion. So Wantoe has the right; he can disagree with it based on his analysis. The topic of our conversation today is the leadership crisis in Liberia. This is my opinion that Liberia as a country is in a major leadership crisis. It's been my opinion for a long time now. Because for me, leadership is not about who gets into a certain position or who has a certain title or who holds what. And at various levels, you know, when you say leadership, you start to talk about leadership in Liberia, people only think about politics. Who is the president? Who is the vice president? Who is the speaker of the house? And all those people. I'm talking about this at all levels, in schools, in the church, in civil society organizations, in the media, politically, at all levels of the society. In fact, in the home, from the family. I believe there's a serious leadership crisis in Liberia. So first of all, Wantoe, I want you to give your view on this. Do you agree with the premise by which we are going to be having a conversation, or what is your thought on this particular premise that Liberia as a country has been in a leadership crisis for a while at all levels?
I agree. I definitely do agree with you, Leo. We obviously have a devastating leadership crisis, and it's not unique to a political orientation. It's unique to a country as a whole. There are a lot of things to think about when I always embrace this subject, Leo. Is the fact that since 1847, we are the oldest, oldest by declaration of independence across Africa. We were fundamentally part of some of the thriving economies in Africa today, who was part of their own struggle of declaration of independence. So it shows that there's a deficit that we haven't learned from. One thing I believe we haven't learned from that is a leadership crisis in this country. We haven't learned from the adamant cause of our civil crisis in this country. And I read your story that you fled like Europe to Canada during the Civil War, but we still haven't learned from it. Countries like Rwanda have drastically learned from their civil crisis. For instance, currently I'm studying comparative international education at Oxford. And what Rwanda did was to be able to transition the educational curriculum to fit the context of a post-war country that can grow in civic and global leadership. That in Liberia we haven't learned from it. Tribalism is still part of the hallmark of our conversation. Even our political discourse today does not have tangible, conversation around policies, implementations, and pragmatic leadership solutions. So that is a challenge because we need critical solution to transition this country. If at this stage we'll still be having political conversation where people are still using tribalistic sentiment, I think we still haven't grown from that stage yet. If at this stage we haven't appreciate milestone to use it as a pedestal to be able to grow from in different areas, it's still yes. Here's another thing. Even in our budget to main Liberia, and probably we'll talk more about Liberia as a case study. We are structurally, you know, uh, inherently appreciating governance in the terms of few minority are holding political stake power, having more funding being given to them in benefits and salaries, where there are only few, West Civil 7, almost 80% in Liberia are probably making around $100 per day. We infrastructure currently in our country is extremely poor. There will be governance in this country for 6 years that will not even replicate the learning center that you did here in Liberia. So there is a leadership deficit, but the most important question is we change that leadership deficit, and that is investment in conversation. For me, I believe that if we expand the horizon of having critical conversation, we will be able to grow from the current challenges we have. The second aspect is we have to be able to create civic enlightenment where people can be able to understand, the cost of a leadership deficit in the country. And I think that is very important for us to grow from that stage.
Yeah, thank you. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to make it a little bit juicy here. I know we've been warming up with our introductions and just setting the stage for what's going to happen. Let me just recognize some of our viewers here. Ente Miata Sterling, thank you so much for sharing far and wide. Appreciate you all the time. Jefferson Coco, good to see you. Yakpa Wolo Sem, Yakpa Wolo, good to see you, my friend. Prince Kunswen, thanks for joining us. Tukus Ama Harris, our country manager at the Learning Center. That your man, Wantoe Teah Wantoe here. So thank you for joining us as well. Chelsea, thank you for joining us. Amos Pendakoli, thank you. Jefferson Coco, Amos, also Michael Dotepesin. Good to see another very active young man in the political has been active in the political landscape in Liberia. Henry Solomon, Abu V. Masale, Jeremiah Nimo, Vincent Darayu Kafa, thank you for joining. Blackintosh Kamara, thank you. James Made, Richard Bala, thanks to all of you. I can't name everybody. We'll get back to you as we go through the show. But Wantoe Teah Wantoe, let me put you on the spot. You are a very smart young man. You are well accomplished by any standards, period. You know, in Liberia, when we disagree with people politically on issues, then we tend to we want to denigrate what they've achieved and who they are because we don't want to admit. You can't say the person's stupid or crazy, and at the same time, you admit that the person has achieved all of these things. So let me state it clearly. You are a very accomplished person by all standards as a young man from Liberia, and I'm very proud of you, actually, because we're often looking for these examples. But let me put it to you. Why CDC? You're a very active, part of one of the largest political parties in Liberia, the Congress for Democratic Change, led by former President George Weah. So my question to you before I even go any further, why CDC?
It's a very interesting question. I always face this question a lot. There's two things. One is the identification that we have leadership crisis and deficit in Liberia. No political party has the moral authority to be able to justify that they are the arbiter of morality. That is, both the Unity Party, the CDC have some level of challenges that exhibit lack of trust in voters, voter apathy, and the desire for Liberians for change. Even as a citizen, I will obviously admit that there are a lot of challenges as well in CDC. My support for CDC is driven by a lot of things, and I always say this. I think if we disagree with this current government, there's a pragmatic opportunity to reform an institution that fit the context of what we want. So hence, my first ideology of being of a supporter of CDC is the identity of CDC. I believe in the nature that CDC in itself is a party of ordinary Liberians, marketers, and people who are truly desiring exceptional change for Liberians. If you, we had the due payment launch at the party headquarters a few days ago, and there were ordinary people who were at the party headquarters. Notwithstanding, they are also Liberians as well. And that in itself was inspiring for me. That means you have people who are from ordinary background who are desiring, reform cities. And the reason why I say this is because from first premise, I argue that no political party has more in Liberia. But the city will have all challenges and extreme challenges as possible. So the reform CDC means that CDC itself must be reformed to fit the identity and context of the true Liberia that we desire. So hence my support for CDC currently is campaigning for the reform CDC internally, fitting the context of where people will be aspiring for the Liberia that they desire from what the current government is producing.
Yeah.
So
Thank
the
you.
third aspect I always tell people, and I'll just end on this third note. The third aspect I always tell people is that I've not worked in CDC before. I've not United Party before. I've not consultancy, not nomination, not in any role. I didn't go to school on government scholarship. I went to school fully on a private institutional scholastic scholarship. So I don't owe any political party an identity, but I owe an identity for a political institution that I believe can be reformed and fit the desire of what Liberians believe. And that's what I believe in CDC.
Thank you, Tia. And certain things that you stated are facts. I would like to repeat it for people to hear. Number one, there's no debating that for whatever reason, the ordinary common people of Liberia have gravitated towards CDC consistently. No debate about that. And maybe it might be part of the reason might be the inspirational life story of CDC political godfather and leader, former President George Weah. It might be the way they carry themselves. Common people can relate. Whatever those reasons are, there's no debating about that. But I'm going to ask you this question in a very pointed way. For someone like you, who have been exposed to better, who knows better, and continue to experience that in your academic and scholarly sojourn, the recent due payment campaign that CDC carried on, I have to admit, was very impressive. And, people showed up. And, people like to deny it. People were showing videos saying, oh, how many people so much? Oh, those people don't pay so much. You have to admit, that compound was packed. People were talking about it. People pay their dues. But my question to you, Wantoe Teah Wantoe, the election laws of Liberia says every political party must submit their financial report. Every political party, it is a law. How can a party like CDC, when I say a party like CDC, I mean in terms of all of the capabilities it has, right? Smart people of many different backgrounds, up to today's date, it has been in power before, by the way, a former ruling party, up to today's date, have not been able to abide by the election laws of Liberia by doing something as simple as producing financial reports to its members or to the public, as it is stated in the Liberian election laws. How can you yourself, right? And it was good to hear you say you are campaigning for reform in the party itself. How can you yourself reconcile the fact that, I mean, we live in the West. We see when political parties are go ahead, they publish their financials, in fact, to the point where they name the donors and people who actually contribute. How can you reconcile the fact as young people, if we are asking for something different, how can we push this agenda that a party like CDC should be able to demonstrate that type of transparency, not only when they are in power, even just as a political party going forward?
I think I would say, Leo, the current due payment of have, the financial regulation is being placed to transparency and accountability. If you speak about the CDC in the past, that's a very great conversation. And I'm sure this is not unique to a specific political party. As I
No,
said in my opening premise, my desire in CDC is how do we reform CDC to fit the context of what Liberians would truly desire in the kind of leadership that we aspire for. And so, with that context, means there must be a lot of fundamental changes that we design in CDC to fit that narrative. And that is even beyond just the fact of just due payment. We have to inspire CDC to be an institution driven by policy and ideas. We have to inspire CDC to be an institution that attracts smartest mind as possible, who believe that truly there could be genuine changes in Liberia, like you, who left from Canada, will raise an incredible amount of money to come and ensure something life changing here in Liberia. That's the kind of pure pragmatic leadership we want in Liberia. And I think it's not our crisis in Liberia is not about political identity. It's about having true expertise in or technocraft in political institutions that are giving roles and support to be able to transition that institution. So obviously, the due payment will be fully transparent. The accountability process will be driven out, and even public will be able to understand where CDC stand financially in terms of their support and so forth.
yeah,
As someone who went to school in the US, and I get where you asked that question from because you stay in Canada for a very long time. And as someone who lived in the US and school in the US for years and currently live in the UK and study, electoral laws provide financial, transparency in all political candidacies. In fact, where your money is coming from, who is the donors for your campaigns and stuff, that is a very pragmatic practice that is being done all over. In fact, one of the last New York congressional lawmaker, George Santos, was sentenced
yep,
to out of
to
some
prison.
years because of
Yep.
financial malpractices in his campaign finances. Unfortunately, the systematic approach you have in Liberia does not present that opportunity, meaning that there is a structural challenges with even transparency and accountability in all sectors in Liberia, even in electoral sectors. Even the National Election Commission, unfortunately, this conversation will go Leo. The National Election Commission hosted a senatorial election costing millions of dollars. If you see how it was conducted in Nima County, you realize that millions of dollars not be used for the electoral process in Nimba. That means it has to be better, it has to be very driven, and the money has to be accountable as well. And for us in CDC, our pure intention is how can we reform this institution? How can we support it? How can we expand it to be an institution where if you disagree with how governance is in the current governance process, you'll be inspired to reform CDC. And that's where my interest is.
And that is my push to you right there, Wantoe. Like you rightly said, we all agree that the institutional framework in Liberia, in fact, the enforcers of the laws or the custodians of the laws themselves do not even abide by the very law that they should be enforcing. So I fully agree with you on that. And this is where I'm talking about inspirational transformation and change, right? So the due payment is one aspect. You rightfully said that. But I'm talking about just overall. As a party, whether people pay due, whether people not pay due, every year imagine, and you're right, this is not limited to CDC. This is all political parties across the board. I'm yet to see one. Imagine if every year a party like CDC, as popular as CDC is, was publishing its financial report. Whether they get 10 cents in their coffers, whether they get 10 million in their coffers. All we need to know is publish a financial report. How much money did you raise? Where does it come from? Because if you say you want to drive change, and the institutional framework does not exist right now, or it's not being enforced, or people overlooking it, is that me going to Liberia and say, you know what, right now trying to build a learning center in a place is too hard because the fact is the challenges are there. It's not easy, and then renege from it instead of trying. But before you take on that point, I'll add another question to it. Do you believe CDC should not have former President Weah as an automatic standard bearer of CDC? Do you believe there should be a free, fair, transparent process put forward where other young leaders aspiring for leadership through the CDC should have the opportunity to have a level playing field to challenge President Weah's standard bearership, as it should be in every democratic society? Whenever there's an election or whenever a party has a circle, there should be that. Go ahead.
That's a very great question, Leo. The first thing is, I don't think CDC is an aristocratic leadership. I don't see an authoritarian leadership political party. Like every political party, CDC aspires for equal primary and an opportunity for all partisans. In fact, even President Weah is open to any partisans in CDC who think they are better candidate towards 2029. So that's the different aspect of CDC. The other critical aspect about it is that the transparency in CDC primary has been proven over the years, where candidates from all sectors, all legislative spaces are provided the opportunity to campaign for their procedures. So if that is if anyone who is duly in CDC who thinks they over the years that have worked and think they are better candidate than President Weah, the party is open to have them for. As what it stands right now, the political party believe in the leadership of President George Manuel Weah as the standard bearer towards 2029, and that's the party identity. We could talk about what that presents for the political party, and we could talk about his legacy and what he presents for Liberia as a whole. And I think all political party, in my perspective of what a political party structure is, the head is the demand goal of the party, but the party has to operate functionalist perspective. That is, all political candidates and every other institutional roles in the party, from party executives. So even was minimum roles in the party, fundamental block of the party. The party standard bearer serve as the head and leader of the party, lead the vision and objective. But is a thing of collective work. It's reform CDC in the way that we want to reform. That means every avenues in CDC will be driven towards meeting the objective and the perspective of all Liberians. And so, as it stands right now, the candidate for 2029, the leader of the party, is President George Manuel Weah, and he is very open to any candidate who think that they are better to lead the party towards 2029. They should come, but in CDC, the undisputed candidate that we have right now is President George Manuel Weah, and President George Manuel Weah will be leading the party to political party election in 2029.
Yeah. So thank you. So I'll push you a little bit higher, my brother. So when I hear you and ordinary seditians around the country hear you say the undisputed leader of the party who leading the election to 2029 is President George Weah, do you think that provides any? And number two, if President Weah is open to any transparent process or anybody who feel they have the ability to lead the party, do you believe that he should step down as standard bearer? Because you can be the standard bearer and everybody saying that, oh yeah, you automatically leading the party to 2029. But however, if anybody won't go, let them come. But and now we know President Weah is in. So do you believe he should step aside and allow for a process or a convention like you guys always do, and there's an open election? And again, I'm asking this question from a purely learning standpoint because I don't know the way CDC works. So
it's a great question, Leo. So let's first start with what the word undisputed means. The word undisputed means generally agreed upon, not subject to dispute. The second aspect is undisputed means unchallenged, undoubted, unquestioned. As I said in my opinion, I said he is the undisputed candidate. That means unchallenged, and he's primarily known as a primary candidate towards 2029. And yes, the reality about it, I think also is an unfair characteristic of a political party because President Trump refused to go through a primary process with any candidate. In fact, he avoided any of the process of primary. The candidates were doing primary on themselves. He was the undisputed candidate because he believed that he has no right to be able to go to any candidate as a primary as the ex-official of the party.
So my question to you is...
The next,
go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah. The next aspect is what you ask. If you have a candidate, of course, that have worked in a party, that follow the party rules, that have legitimacy to aspire for the role, you can bring that. If if you are a member of CDC and you want to aspire for the president of CDC, and you follow all the constitution and bylaws and fit the legitimacy of what it entails to be a candidate, you're open to be able to challenge President Weah for the presidency. But what I said is that as of current, CDC as a political party have made President Weah as the agreed candidate towards 2029. And we could talk about it, the thematic aspect about it. One, he was just literally the last presidential president of the country. He led the party for years. Are we using the same standard with President Mahama in Ghana that came back to a political power? He lost two terms in Ghana. He was still the undisputed candidate in Ghana and led them to presidency. So it is fact based, and I think if we use President Weah as a latter stake, it becomes an unfair conversation because it's been proven geopolitically and even internationally by candidates who led over time.
So yeah, and those are great points, right? But I just want to also state clearly that President Trump is not a great example, in my opinion. Not because America did it or Ghana did it means it's also right. But you're right. There are examples that this stuff has happened around the world. It's not unique, even in the great United States. But I just want to lay the premise that just because it's done, that doesn't mean it's right. Now I'm going to push you a little bit. Wantoe Teah Wantoe, you as a young leader, a lot of young people listen to you, by the way. You are an opinion leader. Whether you hold any position in CDC or not, we have to admit that you are a force to be reckoned with. When you speak, a lot of young people follow. A lot of young people believe in you. They aspire to who you are and what you want to be. So I will say this to you today. Would you say the CDC government of the past 6 years, right, in power under President Weah's leadership, failed because they did not even accomplish 10% of the Pro-Po agenda? So I went through it. I took my time. I read all the pillars of the Pro-Po agenda. I took out all of the key, because for me, I like to base things on facts. Now, I'm not saying the CDC government did not do anything else beyond that. That would be false. The CDC government did a lot, and I can name some to you. I tell people till today's date, the Invincible Park, right? People like to say, oh, mediocre park, and I always ask people to say, okay, let's agree that's true. But it is the only one in the country to this day. What happened to all the great leaders who know great parks? Why they didn't build one? And that place is packed every time of the day you pass there. It tells you that is something the country celebrates. And then we go to PHP as well. I'm just letting people to know that I'm not saying press, because people are quick to say, oh, you said President, we didn't do nothing. But I'm saying the agenda that you put forth, that was your primary rule of measurement, that you say we should measure you by whether you failed or you succeeded. You were not able to complete about 10% of the deliverables when I went through, and I can go through the list because I have it here. Would you say in the deliverance of the Pro-Po agenda for prosperity and development, the CDC government actually failed in that particular measurement when it comes to it?
So let me explain interestingly, that's a very great question. Again, I believe that all political cities as a political party will have done more than what they did. But let me break down the accomplishment of CDC in terms of the pillars. So CDC, obviously, like you said rightly, has the Pro-Po pillar, which is very critical to the governance process on the CDC. The first pillar that CDC had was the power to the people, and the power to the people pillar look at healthcare, it looks at education, youth development, gender, social protections, and also other critical issues. I'm hoping. All right. So in terms of healthcare, uh, I could name a couple of accomplishments on the CDC. The 14 military hospital in Magibi, and 8 different hospitals constructed in the southeast. In fact, we have the 100-bed Emory Hospital in Papulu County, newly constructed hospital in River Cess, and there is a new Redemption Hospital under construction on the CDC. The CDC increased doctors from monthly salary of $700 to $2,000. And again, they provided 2,500 health worker payroll even after the donor healthcare fund ended. In fact, CDC provides specialist training for over 19 doctors in Liberia. And they also provide what we call vaccination of 71% of the population during the COVID-19 crisis. In fact, on the CDC COVID-19 crisis, we had the least ever mortality in all African countries, given how well the crisis was handled comparatively with the Ebola crisis that had over 10,000 cases and 4,000 plus deaths. Then we also talk about the education, the youth developed the education pillar. CDC did something extremely pragmatic that have never been seen before in our history, and that's a policy. And you, from a policy background, you understand that if you are taking on progressive policy, it has a lot of restitution on challenges in governance. And one of these challenges has to do with the idea of where do you fund that entire policy from. CDC provided free public education that benefited more than 10,000 Liberians every year. That is monumental. That is a milestone in itself. Beyond just the free tuition policy, there was free WAS that benefited 40,000 students yearly in this country on a CDC. The other aspect we'll talk about is the building of over 28 high schools, 18 early or childhood schools that were built on a CDC, as well as a demonstration of promoting education. In fact, there was an increase in the pay of 3,500 supplementary or to 8,000 USD 125 given to teachers in Liberia. First time ever increase in educational funds. Then you have also adding 1,300 teachers to the payroll to expand opportunity for students across, and that is education. The youth development gender policy also was part of the pillar of CDC, which is youth development gender policy social protection. CDC renovated the SKD sport of bringing forth the international fever standard for that was down for $3 million. They also invested in $1 million transforming of at-risk youth in this country. The other aspect is improve rating of rape cases in this country. In fact, the rape case is very interesting. I was part of the lead organizers of the rape of the largest protest for anti-rape in this country that demanded President Weah to ensure that rape is considered an emergency crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Few days ago, the Independent Human Rights Commission report said that incidents rape have increased since 2011. Incident rates have increased to a stage never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And these are and the other aspect is the macroeconomic and jobs avenue also. CDC re-established the macro stability inherited in the past government, honor the government of President Serif and Joseph Imambaka. In fact, 2023 World Bank report, you can check it out. The World Bank said that fiscal and macro stability in Liberia is at an extreme, is at an incredible pace on the CDC in 2023. When after the end of the election, the World Bank provided a report called the Poverty Report Strategy, and that report highlighted that poverty under the timeline under President we are in Liberia declined at a very low rate. I can share the copy of that report to you.
Oh no,
The
I've
report
actually read
also
it.
talk about
Yeah, I've read it.
you read it, right? Great.
Yes.
So the reason why we say these things is because there were a lot of things. I'm not
Well,
saying
well,
things
no,
did not have
Wantoe,
challenges.
Wantoe, let me throw this in,
Mhm.
and then you can actually continue. And brilliant presentation, by the way, digging deeper into some of the things that you can pull out that CDC government did, right? But my question to you again: in governance, CDC governed for 6 years. How come every year there was not a measurement indicator report? But I asked for this every single year on a CDC. From the Ministry of Finance, I wrote letters. I asked for it to say, you got something to measure yourself by, right? Imagine if every year we had, and a measurement report from the CDC government saying, the pro agenda here is where we struggled, and because of these challenges, because we all know governance is not just as straightforward. You struggle sometimes based on what is happening internationally. To say, here's where we struggled, here's where we've succeeded, here's where we've made, immense progress. And like I said, you mentioned some of the progress, the hospitals, the Emirati hospital, the Futi military hospital, all these things are great things. So how come CDC fell in a cardinal piece every year? Because I always used to ask for it. I said, where
It's great.
are your reports?
Leo, you have a point. Part of the reason why CDC as a political party lost the electoral process is CDC did not pragmatically communicate their sources. And like I'm stating this thing to you now, you'll be shocked. The Bapolu County that we talk about the Emery Hospital, the last time President Barker went to Bapolu County, he went to Iredo Hemp Pump. Honor CDC, the last time President we went to Bapolu County, it was to erect 100-bed hospital called the Emery Hospital. Compare these two developments. They are not comparable in any way possible. So what we see here is that a political party that did not communicate its accomplishment. And this is the reality. The reality is that CDC had exceptional accomplishment beyond just the fact of the propaganda that people play around. Governance is extremely challenging. When you are outside of government, you think that it's ready to lead or serve, but it's a complex layer. I mean, for people who are serving different capacity, it began for them. But you can't diminish the fact that it's also complex to run a governing institution.
Yep,
What
that's
we
true.
see here also is that we believe, and some of we share these things and we maintain it because Liberia must not be led by public relations anymore. We must be truth with facts and honesty. And that's why we are communicating these things right now. Because the report they will talk about, you thank God you read the report on the poverty reduction. If I were having conversation with someone else, they say, no, that report did not exist, but it did actually exist.
Yeah, and
That under that
yeah.
time now, poverty reduced specifically on the CDC. CDC have not even talked about the COVID-19 crisis. This is an unsung heroic exploration in an external crisis. I tell a lot of people, that the Ebola crisis is now worse than the COVID-19 crisis. And this is my argument, Leo. You may disagree with me. The Ebola crisis was centered around Ivory Coast, Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. And maybe we could add Nigeria and few others that have few cases. The COVID-19, some of the greatest economy in the world were the worst hit. So in the Ebola crisis, countries like America in the Center for Disease Control invest immensely in combating that crisis in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. But COVID-19, America is also worrying about that mortality rate. How many times they got focused on the fact that there was leadership to ensure that we stabilize that crisis in Liberia on a CDC comparatively with the Ebola crisis that have almost 4,000 deaths and 10,000 cases. Incredible. And we could talk about also the fiscal, the economic challenges on where the African Development Report on that crisis. You know what they say about economists in Africa? The African Development Bank highlighted that during the COVID crisis, all economies, especially developing countries like Liberia, will completely have a non-fiscal and macro policy sustainability. In 2023, CDC defined a report bank stating that macro stability and feasibility were incredible. In fact, CDC brought in $40 billion Liberian dollars and still did not go through inflation fiscal stability report.
Yeah, I think that's
So
a
this
good.
is what we are saying.
Yeah, and I think
This is
Wantoe
what
Teah
we are saying. And,
yeah,
and
finish,
you have
sorry.
a point just to end.
Yeah, yeah.
Just to end, you have an incredible point in your analysis. And I agree with that. And that's why we are reforming CDC to be one that communicates its success, to be one that can be able to provide some of the tangible and challenges to the Liberian people. Because that's what governance is. Governance must be built on honesty, integrity, existing challenges. We
Yeah,
have to build a PRO government.
yeah,
And,
no,
and
thank
so
you.
I agree with you, and that's why we need to change.
Yeah, and thank you, Wantoe Teah Wantoe, for going in deep. So, like you said, I have my disagreements on the Ebola versus COVID, because as grave as COVID was and widespread globally, affecting even some of the strongest economies we've ever seen in the world, COVID was not as deadly as Ebola was. Now, I'm not saying COVID was not deadly. COVID killed a lot of people around the world, but we all know the pace at which Ebola. But again, those are different lenses. We can look at it through the different lens. So it's not going to be about what I want to is right or I'm wrong or whatever. We can look at it through different lens. So I will not dwell on that. I want to ask you two fundamental questions that many Liberians have complained that the CDC government failed them on. And you can, again, I'm saying many Liberians have, you can address it. Number one, the issue of substance, mental health, and drug abuse in Liberia. We saw President Weah institute a task force on this piece and declare it an emergency under his leadership. And all Liberians agree with that, the escalation of this problem. And by the way, people like to blame one government or the other. I would be unfair if I say that and say, oh, that CDC fought that we got mental health. The mental health and drug and substance abuse situation started since the war ended. That's when it actually started because of the remnants of what we have from the war and has just been getting worse. And that task force was established, underfunded, not funded, couldn't move any further. The reason I can say that is because I engaged the task force. I knew some of the people that was on it, and personally just wanted to know what were some. They never got started, never got on the way, and we never saw any concerted national effort across the country intentionally to deal with this issue under President Weah. The second piece that I will talk about, a lot of people mention that was a big deal, was the free education policy at the University of Liberia. A university that was lying in ruins, right? The building unfit for inhabitation. We all consistently, all governments have been lying to our young people, telling them that they are learning. We're giving them degrees that we all celebrate every year. When truth be told, the University of Liberia does not have what it takes to deliver quality education by any standards, period. But we all celebrated it. President Weah announced a free tuition policy, which I believe is a great thing, except that it was not funded at all. So yes, you opened the university. It was in dire strait, in a very difficult situation as it was, and then open it up to free education, free university, and CDC boasted about that policy everywhere, except that the University of Liberia has gotten worse as we've seen the years gone. So my question to you, do you believe President Weah dealt with the drug crisis effectively as CDC government could have when you look back on it after they instituted their task force? And what was the accomplishment of that task force, if you know any? Number two, do you believe the free tuition, unfunded free tuition policy established at UL in the dilapidated condition that UL already was in terms of the infrastructure, the quality of education, the quality of faculty, and all of that, with none of that addressed, do you believe CDC did the best for the University of Liberia within your opinion and what you know as someone who is knowledgeable to some of the things I may not have access to within CDC?
It's very, very interesting. I assume that we're gonna have a. I didn't know we are gonna have a political conversation, but it's
Anyway,
very interesting that.
but it's also fair to you, Wantoe, if there were things that it's fair for us to actually skip in and move. The conversation just could keep
No,
going deeper. We'll have to, so
no,
it would be fair to you.
no. Yeah,
I didn't tell you. Yeah.
yeah. Because in my view, I assume we're gonna talk about other issues too. But it's nice.
Yeah.
Let's have a political conversation.
Yeah.
I would say this as possible as someone who value what education is. I agree with your sentiment on the universal library. I think the universal library must be expanded to a space where we wouldn't just argue on affordability but quality. And I think the standard of the universal library is not something that we can be proud of. And so I cannot dispute the fact in your analysis that there are structural and fundamental issues that we have to change to provide quality education. And I've never underestimated the fact that I had the opportunity to learn in very driven countries and some of the best schools in the world. And so I think what President we have tackled for me, in as much as I think there are challenges with this, Leo, I think differently about it. I think on the basis of affordability. So in 2018, President, we have provided argued on free tuition for education for undergraduate at Liberia Public University. I think this was a transformative objective because the idea of having lack of quality education is not unique to a specific political orientation. It's not CDC. It's not Unity Party. It's a structural issue that came from the ramification of the civil conflict we have in our country. We always cannot use the civil conflict as a bearer for the challenges we have our education sector, but we cannot dismiss the fact that the civil conflict also had a damaging effect and impact in our education sector. Honor President Salif, she said our education system is a mess. That in this justified there was an inherent crisis with our educational system. And I think this for me is where I value the idea of affordability. The affordability provides an opportunity for students to go to school and learn within a space of time. Provided a statistic, over 10,000 Liberians every year got educated under the free tuition policy. So this government currently have an opportunity to build on that and expand it to a better quality space. And I think we all can be able to support it. I do not think education should be politicized. I think education should be a non-political issue, should be driven purely by pragmatic solutions, and we should all be very excited in several ways to be able to contribute to how we can be able to redefine in our education sector to fit what we all envision. So the
I agree
last
with you.
question you asked about the drugs and abuse crisis is very interesting. What we're seeing over time is extremely concerning with our drugs crisis in this country. In fact, we had an incident where the two deputies, including the head of the Laboratory Drugs Agency and the two deputies were suspended by President Boaga because of very damaging report that came from the LDA. I don't know if you read that report, Leo. If you haven't, I think it's
Yeah.
very nice to read it.
Yeah, I actually did. I
So
don't have it with me. Maybe that's something I will publish. I will post it on my page so people. I haven't. I
it
got the
is.
report. Yeah.
So what we saw during the recent regime is that drugs were politicized in a way an unfair crisis unique to a specific political institution. In our current time, the government have realized that justice is not a political issue, it's a systemic issue. And if you understand the crisis in Liberia, I spoke about the Rwanda transition in their process. I think one of the biggest failure we had in this country was the DDR process. Whether you like it or not, it had no pragmatic transition for Liberians to be able to go from being a child soldiers and traumatized from the civil conflict to a space where they will be brought back to the society and contribute in so many ways. So some of the young people on the street today were people who, back in the days were part of either child soldiers, and the current one were people who have been vulnerable. We don't have opportunities for young people. We're not having critical conversation on the ramification of drugs and harmful substance. Unfairly, our borders are not being secure in a way. People are using drugs crisis in the country for fundamental financial gain. And that is the issues. That is the issue. We need pure solutions. Currently, you know what's happening in the US. The current crisis on the trade war is because the US believes that the borders will be secure, even from just entering it. if a country so great as the US can see immigration as a critical step to be able to prevent harmful drug substance, why more about Liberia? So there are a lot of
Absolutely.
things that we need to do, and I do not think it's unique to a specific regime.
Yep.
It's unique to a Liberian crisis, and we
Yep.
must have a solution to it.
Yeah, my man, you know I had to be fair. The people will say you brought Sidisha on the show. You don't ask him, so I had to ask you. So let me switch. Let me switch my gears here to more. And by the way, thank you for taking these questions graciously. I did not inform Wantoe Teah Wantoe that I was going to be going this deep into these questions. So thank you for
Yeah,
graciously accepting.
literally.
Yeah,
We've just
yeah,
completed a
yeah,
milestone.
yeah.
We just completed a milestone launch yesterday of the Scholarly Power Office, and we
And
launched the
oh,
Global Scholars
I
Program.
actually forgot.
So,
Congratulations to you. Big
thank
congratulations
you.
to you and your team on that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah.
And trust me, Leo, when we started this process with the Scholarly Path program, we reached out to government, non-governmental actors in the private sector because we think, in my belief, I have a belief that fundamentally issue as education must not be politicized. We can have political opinions, but we can leave pragmatic solutions. And I feel like if you assume that just because Liberia is running in a way that you think should be better, if you think things as resource center, you think that the country is terrible, it's worse as a diaspora Liberian, sit in Canada, eat every day, drink, I don't care about Liberians, you will not have achieved the mastery you achieved today. So this is the situation in this country currently, Leo. We need to be inspired as all Liberians to support this country. This country is the only country we have. We may have our political views, but there are areas and avenues we can lead bipartisan support. So when we started, we reached out to government institutions, we reached out to state-owned enterprise on the launch process. And we had off to some of the institutions that led fundamental changes. I appreciate Odoka. They just launched an SR scholarship that provide 2 librarians to go abroad and study. That for me is a milestone. I will appreciate these things when I see it. Well, what we intend to do with the Global Scholars Program, or Leo, is that with what you build here, which is the learning center that has Starlink computer, our biggest objective is utilizing the space here to track and monitor 150 librarian progress to apply for fully funded scholarship around the world. Like currently MasterCard is offering 100,000 scholarship by 2030. So if MasterCard is offering 100,000 scholarships to African by 2030, the World Bank Scholarship is located in 41 different institutions around the world, providing fully funded scholarship. In Oxford alone, where I study, they currently offer over 70 MasterCard scholarship every year for Africans. This year, no Liberian is part of that process. So we think this must fundamentally change, and how it must change is providing access to information. And this is
Yeah.
why we are very inspired by the Global Scholar launch, which will help 150 librarians to just sit in 3 months' time, prepare their application, work on their study, their statement resume. Bring other librarians who study in some of the institutions we are targeting for scholarship, allow them to share their experience, how they went through, read through their personal statement of purpose, and we are optimistic that will have more than 80% success rate at the end of our program. And this is what we are inspired for in Liberia currently with the work we do with Scholarly Path.
Yeah, no, thank you. And as like I said, big congratulations to you. So I will speak to you offline, but we've successfully managed to bring MasterCard to Liberia. I was the keynote speaker at the Young Africa Works conference in Cape Town, South Africa, a few years back. And one of the cases I made was for Liberia because MasterCard tried to stay away from post-conflict countries just because the foundation is not laid. So I made that case and been chalking away at it for years. And fortunately, about 3 years ago, we convinced them to provide the first funding to Empowerment Square to run a small business entrepreneurship program in Liberia. We
That's
did a
very
second round.
incredible.
Yeah, we did a second round. So right now, I'm actually doing a presentation with the MasterCard team about growing that into a full-scale MasterCard official operation in Liberia. The MasterCard Foundation is the largest in the world. So I'm glad to see you guys. In Ching, I think there could be some synergies for us to institutionalize this more. And this was the whole essence of the Learning Center. I tell people we've done our small part by providing the environment and the kind of space that requires so that Liberians with the innovation and thinking can be able to get access to the tools that they need to do the quality of work that they can actually do. So somebody was joking with me one time. They said, we see all the people there around. We see the Unity Party children and we see the sedition and we see. So I told them, I say, at the Learning Center, nobody got party color. At the learning center, your
About it, yeah,
only
yeah,
qualification you need there is that you are a Liberian or non-Liberian, but
determined,
you align with the vision of the space. That all we need from you. Whether
of course, of
you
course,
opposition, no position, imposition,
of course,
it doesn't matter to me. If Liberia's progress is your concern and you're willing to work within
of
that
course.
space, we wholeheartedly welcome you to the family equally like anybody else. But let me push you on the leadership piece a little bit. We talk about leadership
Okay,
crisis in Liberia, Wantoe Teah Wantoe, and this is my issue I've always had. According to global understanding, the age 60 and up is retirement zone, right?
sure,
In my opinion. That's not to say people who are 60 and older are not incredible leaders, or have some of them are strong enough and have the ability, like we see in the United States, right? To be leaders with President Trump or whoever else that is. But in a country like Liberia, where unilaterally, right, we've only elected overwhelmingly those in the final stages of their retirement, right? I'm not just saying just starting it. Where to the point where when a young person tried to step up, the first thing you hear, oh, you're too young, man, you still get time. Oh, that a kid, man, what a kid trying to actually do. When serious countries like the United States were willing to take their nuclear codes, the most powerful military in the world, the largest economy, trillions of dollars, and put it in the hand of a 44-year-old Barack Obama, and put
of
it
course,
in the hand of a 40-something-year-old John F. Kennedy, right? And these are some of the biggest serious countries. A country like Canada could put the
of,
entire country economy in the hand of a 40-something-year-old Justin Trudeau, right? And we can go to African countries now, Mali, and not Mali, Senegal, Dakar. We take their country and put it in the hands of a young man who, in my opinion, has conducted himself well. Why in Liberia we've abused, and all political parties combined? Nobody can tell me, say, oh yeah, CDC promoted people to ministerial positions, so Unity Party promoted young people. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the overwhelming sentiment in our country is that you got to get B-stomach, you got to be old enough, you got to be your retirement age, you got to get a lot of friends and have done deals in the political circle, corrupt deals in the political circle to be seen as one, to the point where we are willing to say, the person here, you not understand that America thing you won't bring, or that Canada thing you won't bring, you not understand. But then all I want to travel to America. All I want Canada to go to school. All I want to go to these places. So my question to you is, what is this mindset that even those from the progressives, and who was one young activists and leaders yearning for this, have failed today to uplift brilliant young Liberians? I always say, let me give you an example now, let you speak. Mahmoud Johnson in Liberia runs Canal Fresh, right? A young man left the US, went to Liberia, decided to start his business, has become very successful, employing hundreds of Liberians, having his business running Canal Fresh. Now is been approved by Johnson & Johnson. It's in Walgreens in the United States. It's now being supplied in the US. We say we are looking for investors, right? How come Mahmoud Johnson is not the poster boy that even when we are taking delegations out of Liberia to talk about people who have succeeded in a Liberian business space, right? To show that a young Liberian managed to figure it out despite all of the challenges that he's going through. So my question to you is, why are we still chasing people in their retirement, latter part of their retirement stage, to be the ones to show us inspiration when they are only interested, most of them, in the time of life that they got on this earth?
it's a very interesting question, Leo, and I will say this as possible. One of the cardinal reasons people challenge, having age in political process is that when you are at the age of 75, 70, even the dying minute of 60, 69, that you have all of the natural aging effects.
That is
Stamina is
biology.
reduced,
Yeah, that is biology.
yeah, yeah, decision making process, even speed and memory retention also is a challenge as well. Your reaction time in post challenges is also seen as possible. This limitation can impact not just the president, but just anybody. So it's not unique to a presidential person. It's unique specifically to any individual within that timeline. And I think when policy was instituted in developing countries to be able to, reflect that, it was on the basis of that. But again, to be fair in this analysis as possible, Leo, is that America also have an aging president.
That's true.
Donald Trump will be
Over
around
70 years
75
old.
years.
Yeah, over 70 years old.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
so in Africa, it is a structural issues that are not unique to Liberia alone. Because in Nigeria, you have a
It's
very
across
old
the
president as
continent.
well.
It's across the continent by
Yes. So
overwhelmingly.
I remember I remember Cameroon, the president of Cameroon went to the African. He did not even understand why he was there in the first place. There was a leaked audio where he was asking, why are we here? Why are so many people clapping for us? There was a lack of memory retention. In fact, as we speak, he's running for re-election process. So it's an African crisis. It's an African crisis. I always think that people in Liberia, one of our biggest challenge, whether CDC or Unity Party, is that we don't tap onto the expertise of especially young,
But
enthusiastic, and
and that
patriotic
is the point
Liberians
I'm trying to
who are
make.
ready.
And that is my
And that's
point.
the truth. And that's the truth. That's the truth. I know a lot of people here, I know a lot of young people who disagree with CDC, who campaign rigorously against the re-election of President Weah, who have impeccable leadership credential and have led pragmatic solutions in avenues outside of governance that could be incredible for some of the solutions we're having we need in Liberia. But none of them are being tapped on. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. The structural issue we have in Liberia is that we reward people on the basis of political, political solidarity. And so this must change. We must be able to bring in competence and leadership in Liberia. We must expand the horizon by providing opportunity for people who are actually competent, people who are prepared to serve, people who believe in Liberia and who come with their leadership role
Yeah,
credential with specific solution to change sectors in Liberia.
and I
So
will give you,
that is what we need.
yeah, and that's a good point. I'll give you an example and you can go ahead. And my radical solution has been this. I said it over and over. Wantoe Teah Wantoe, I want to hear your response to this. I've said to young people in Liberia, if you are a member of any political party, because what has happened in Liberia is that we've made it that anybody who doesn't participate in the politics of Liberia, you can even be changing the country, doing wonders. Nobody cares about you. You know what people call me and they ask me all of the time? Leo, why can you not run? So you're telling me I'm not validated in all the work that I'm doing that you say is great, only because I have not put my hands up and say I want to run for political office. So the only way you can validate me as a key stakeholder in Liberia is when I put my hand out to run for political office. So, so what we've done, we've alienated. Oh, that's why only young people who are in the political atmosphere you see being elevated by government. When government tell you say they appoint a lot of people that the young people who are in the trenches running campaign for them, arguing for them on the radio or whatever that is. How many young people can we say had nothing to do with the political activities, were just working hard on behalf of the country, that governments came to power, whether it's the Unity Party or the CDC, and went after those young people and say, you know what? This young person is not a political, and you know, they're not involved in the politics, but the excellence that they have been able to demonstrate, we need them to help us achieve our goals. That's one. The second piece for me is this whole thing about young people. I have said, young people, any political party you are a member of, that you do not see that they are willing to elevate your leadership, not only by you holding political office, but by elevating you in many other ways, quit. Quit the political party, because if you are 67% of the population and you let 20% of the old folks who only got 10 to 15 years of quality life control your 67% vote, then you keep arguing that you are in the dungeons, they leave you over. When CDC got into power, it didn't take long. Young people were angry that they did not get what they felt they should have gotten, whether wrong or rightfully. So Unity Party, we see the same repeat of it. Young people are arguing today. Should young people quit their political parties in mass if those parties are not meeting their growth needs overall in general? Because that is what a political party is supposed to do. Train your next best, and political analysts, your next best policy makers, your next best business people, your next best thought leaders. I have asked young people to quit these parties in mass if they only treat you as militants. Why are we having militant brigade in political parties where young people overwhelmingly are being used? But go ahead.
You are 100% right. You are 100% right, Leo. And this is an issue. This is an issue that we have to resolve. That to understand that in Liberia currently, every young person is aspiring for political, ambition, or to some extent wants to be political, and that's why we are trying to change the dichotomies of it by inspiring young people that you can actually, expand your horizon into global opportunities. We are not tapping into experts in our country. We are not bringing out young people who demonstrated outside externally that this is what I can do, and then you bring them forward. I always use it as an example. You demonstrated in a very incredible way that you could be able to outsource support to build something monumental in Liberia, which is the Learning Center. That is an incredible leadership demonstration. The last time we spoke, I asked you, the current government reached out to you for your expertise and support. You said, oh no, and stuff. And I'm not even sure even when they when if they are even tapping into your diaspora connection in Canada. But this is the reality in Liberia. We need to do better. We need to be able to be unified in how we can be able to tap into expertise and support. Here's what is interesting. Even in sectors in Liberia, there are some young people that I know that came to leadership with an incredible leadership background. They are not even leading sectors in Liberia. We still have Harry. We still have a recycled perspective of old politicians who are coming into different roles and sectors. Let's say you have someone who served a representative for 3 to 6 years, and then after that person lost an election, you bring them back and give them a sector in specific area and say, go serve that area. So in 3 terms or 2 terms, that person did not meet the qualification of changing where he served, and you bring him back into governance and providing a role to be able to lead a sector. How well will he change that sector? This is the identity currently in Liberia, and I could name numerous other people who fall into that barricade. So how do we move forward? We need to be able to rethink how we provide employment opportunity in Liberia. We need to rethink how we can be able to galvanize the best expertise and technocraft to change sectors in Liberia. We need to be honest by listening to experts. We need to also be honest by also tapping into the idealism of the diaspora community. I say this all the time, Leo. I may be wrong. I believe that the diaspora is our most untapped resource. And the reason why I say it is our most untapped resource is because in the diaspora, you have expertise in every sector, in health sector, in youth development opportunity, in educational sector, in every way you think about. These are young people who are patriotically Liberian. They are inspired to be able to come back and contribute to their country. The most thing we can do as Liberians is how can we tap onto their desire to change this country? How can we be at the forefront of inspiring them to love this country and to support this country? Unfortunately, we're not doing much.
Yep.
Great job that we have the diaspora bill, but the diaspora bill alone is not only sufficient. How are we being able to get some of the best experts in the diaspora to support the transition of this country? Because we can't rely only on just the national base. We can also rely on both the national base and the diaspora base to support the transition of this country.
Yep. And to
So
your point,
obviously,
sorry, end your point. Finish your thought.
yeah, so obviously we have a long way to go, but I believe also like the other issue I talk about, this is not unique to a specific party. It's unique to a Liberia identity crisis. For years, we haven't, appreciated skilled labor and expertise and untapped potential we have, especially among young people who are extremely patriotic, to change this country. But obviously, if you work in the World Bank, your country don't call you to come and support. You stay in the World Bank and continue providing services for other countries. If you work in sectors, your country is not tapping onto you. You stay in other areas to support there. This
Yeah,
is the actual reality,
and I
and
don't want to
we,
lose.
and we have
Yeah,
to change that.
and I don't want to lose my thought on this. I'll give you an example. Wantoe Teah Wantoe. Few years back, I have a lot of friends here in the Canadian Parliament, cabinet ministers in Canada here, right? I have been hounding them about scholarships and opportunities for Liberians from the Canadian government, because the Canadian government does that all of the time. A few years ago, I had an opportunity. One of my men showed up. He said, Leo, finally, you've been giving me a hard time. There are 17 scholarships from the Black Caucus of the Canadian Parliament, and we can work out. Wantoe, I chased down every government official I knew in Liberia, and I will admit it was on a CDC. Nobody gave me ear. So what did I have to do? I went to Ghana. And I went to Ghana. I was treated like king. And immediately got 17 Ghanaians to come to Canada on a fully funded Canadian government scholarship, living expenses. Some of them were able to transition from international students to become permanent residents
Wow.
in Canada.
Wow.
Since that time, imagine the
Wow.
embarrassment I was facing. I went to Liberia. I chased down ministers. We had meetings. Nobody even responded to the email from the Black Caucus or the Canadian Parliament. All they needed was a top Liberian government official to fly to Canada and make the presentation before the Black Caucus as to why Liberia should deserve the 17th scholarship. I went to Accra. In 3 days, I was put on a first-class business class flight. Back to Canada, they made a presentation, 17 Ghanaian scheme. But let me take it further. When we were breaking ground for the Learning Center, right? My brother, Wantoe Teah Wantoe, I brought Canadians, philanthropists, people who are believing in this project from Rotary, all over to Liberia. We invited President Weah. I delivered the letter. Invited President Weah to break grounds. And as president, to give him that honor, because regardless whether you like it or not, he's the president of the country. And I've always believed Whether you hate the government or like the government, it does not matter. When elections are over, that is the government. We will find a way to work with you until the next election. Unfortunately, President Weah did not come, or her name, or Vice President Joa Hawatila attended, which was great in my opinion because there was high-level government representation. She led the groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And after that, nobody from the CDC government ever followed up. Even though Vice President Joa Hawatila was the chief groundbreaker, even though I wasn't asking them for any money, we had raised all the funds internationally to show up with. But number two, would they say when president or vice president show up somewhere, Wantoe Teah Wantoe, the place is not supposed to remain the same. Something's supposed to change, even if it is symbolic or so, to bring them down. Same thing. Under this new government, we've actually transitioned. The learning center is open. My brother, Wantoe Teah Wantoe is operating. You would have thought, I went to Liberia, I've engaged all the various levels. No one has followed up with me to say, Leo, how are things going? Where can we work together? And we want to get an understanding of how things are running. How can we support this? How can we get a second one? Is there an opportunity for us to actually do that? The third thing, in March, I show up in Liberia with a senior government official from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Canada, with senior officials from the Canadian Embassy in Cote d'Ivoire responsible for Liberia. Because Canada just launched their Canada-Africa strategy for the next 10 years, how they're going to be engaging on the African continent. Liberia was not on the list. I love it to try to get, because they were scouting various African countries to see where there might be opportunities for them to engage. So they have Benin, they have Cote d'Ivoire, they have Ghana on it. So I engaged and love it and managed to get the delegation to agree to include Liberia. I led the delegation to Liberia. We met with all levels of government. The only office we could not meet with was the president's office. We met with Ministry of Health, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, everybody. Till to this date, nobody has followed through on that meeting. Nobody has. Like, I'm just saying this to tell you that if I put my hand up today and said I was running for the by-election in Nima, and everybody will start calling me honorable. My followers number will shoot through the roof. Everybody, all the media institutions will start talking about Leo. But because, I'm not in that space, nobody is paying attention to the fundamental things that we should be doing. So my question to you, Wantoe Teah Wantoe, as a young leader in Liberia, how can we start to bring prominence to the spaces outside of the political space? And I will tell you, I watch you all the time. Whenever you are talking about something political, and whether it's against the government or it's for different things, but if it is political, I watch you. Things shoot up. Like the number of people tuning in goes through the roof. Whenever you are talking about education and how people can go to school, I watch how the number drops immediately of the number of people that are tuning through.
Yeah.
How can we change this?
Yeah.
What do we need to actually do with the disjointed approach to the thought process?
I agree. I definitely agree. And this is true. A lot of people, and you're right. A lot of people, I think we have sensationalized our country to become more of a country driven by issues that does not add value to a lot of people. And I'll tell you, Leo, we are changing that gradually. We are changing that in a lot of ways. And you're right. The fact that you lost 17 scholarships for Liberians to go to Canada is an unprecedented embarrassment. And I think, it's very unfortunate that situation happened. Because 17 scholarship, 44 scholarship is an unparalleled accomplishment for anybody.
Yep.
Most of the head of states who go around the world today, they go there to be able to negotiate with territorial institutions for external scholarship for their population. I know for sure Zambia president got some scholarship from the UK at a specific university. This is how leadership is driven. People don't understand. People think leadership is tattoo. Leadership is outreach, connectivity, network, and building relationships. That's how you change the country. We hosted the Oxford African Conference last year. I flew back to Oxford to moderate the governance panel. And Leo, the Edo State governor were providing an annual report how he is outsourcing partnership. This guy has more than 300 institutions globally around the world that he has outsourced partnership from to change his state.
Yep.
So can you imagine? People don't know about how these things are.
And that is a governor. That ain't even the
Liberia.
national country. That's a governor level.
Yeah, a governor alone.
Yeah.
People think that when you have a position to serve, the only dependency is to focus on the national budget. That's the biggest flaws we have in Liberia.
Yeah,
The
no,
national
I
budget
agree.
should not be a dependency for output.
And that
The
is my
dependency for output in our
yeah,
governing institution is to outsource external partnership.
yep,
Because globally around the world, the international monetary system is built in a way that a lot of institutions have opportunities to be able to invest in developing countries. But unfortunately, I always say this: countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and so forth, their leaders are far ahead of us. Because when they go for, even sometimes I go for high level political forum, some gathering that I go to every year, I usually speak at high level political forum, the ECOSOC forum. It was just this year I didn't to speak at the ECOSOC because of engagement. Leo, I was forum. I have more than 4 to 5 speaking engagement in numerous panels and high level events. Even at the General Assembly, you'll see ministers that attend this event. They don't even have speaking opportunity. So why are you traveling in the first place?
yep.
You must travel only if you have legitimate reason to travel. Your travel should have a beneficiary output to the country and your role that you serve.
The outcome should exceed the cost. Whatever you're going for, there should be a direct
Exactly.
outcome that far
Exactly.
exceeds what it costs you to be there.
Exactly. So this is the issue. This is the issue.
Yeah,
We must rethink partnership in its dimension.
yep,
We must rethink partnership in its dimension because it's very critical for us. Very, very critical for us because we need to be able to support. We need to be able to, how can we be able to change sectors? How
yep,
can we build partnership? How can we be
yep,
able to expand opportunities? So for us with Scholarly Path, let me share you our methodology for engagement.
yep,
Our methodology for engagement is changing the narrative of Liberian young people. Very apolitical. It's not driven by CDC, not driven by Unity Party. It's purely driven by expanding opportunity for young people. We believe this year, next year, Liberians should be part of a competitive pool of applicants that are applying for global scholarship, fully funded opportunities around the world. If every year as an institution we are able to support 150 Liberians applying to top schools, 40 funded schools in the world, even 50% are able to leave the country on 40 funded scholarship, we are empowering a generation in this country to prepare to change the narrative. Because we are tired. It's not going to be the transition of Liberia must be a generational issue. But
yep.
it must be built on pragmatic determination
Yeah,
process.
and
We
not on
must
and not
expand
on
opportunity
and not on political party
and
platforms.
not
Agree.
political, and not a
Yep,
political party platform. We
yep,
must expand opportunity for young people. We must look into providing education opportunity for young Liberians. We must
yep,
inspire Liberians that they can be like us too. A
yep,
lot of Liberians ask me, "How did you go to school?"
yep,
You know my uncle for sure. He will explain the story to you. I went to school on funding that my
yep,
parents cannot really afford 0.1%
yep,
of it
yep,
fully funded. In the
yep,
US, fully funded. In Oxford, fully funded. This is what we are saying is that you spoke about something, Leo. How can we change the young culture in Liberia that it will not only be focused on political issues? And this is the reality. Currently at your center here, you're providing, and we always promote this. Just $20, you are providing access to the center for whole year
yeah.
access. And I learned
For the
from
whole
you
year.
that you for the whole year. And I learned that you will be connecting Hamilton Library with the center.
Correct. The
And
Hamilton
student
Public,
at Oxford
yep. The Hamilton Public
from the
Library will be
library,
directly connected with the center over there.
extreme resource,
Yep,
extreme resource that is not even university. In fact, even university library don't have a digital library center.
yep,
Every university, even community college in America has an online laptop.
yep,
In Oxford, where we have the largest library collection, I'm
yep,
always very privileged enough that I still have my student account access that I can still expand into it.
yep.
So it's a lot of issues that we can talk about. And for
A
us to
lot.
think, we are very inspired to be able to change that and we'll be able to promote it. We'll continue to see beyond political view that there are opportunities for it, and this is what we need to be able to
Yeah,
do.
and there's a point I want to show quickly. We did a very civil thing here. I brought here Wantoe Teah Wantoe here. We had conversation about politics, but we didn't have to be insulting. We didn't have to be lying. We didn't have to be creating. We just addressed the facts, and it doesn't matter whether he and say agree or disagree. It doesn't matter. But in a civil way, people can learn from the conversation. We don't have to be this thing where because Leo and Nancy Dishan. So anything Teah Wantoe to say, he won't find a way to make it look negative.
Yeah.
Or because Leo and Unity Party, man, anything someone from Unity Party. No, we can have several conversations around politics and still let people learn. Well, another fun fact I will give you. Somebody sent me a video 2 weeks ago from the UN ECOSOC high-level engagement meeting. And what happened in the video was one of the senior facilitator of the UN, who is not even a Liberian, he's a Nigerian. The Liberian delegation was there. from the permanent mission in New York. And guess what? This senior level official brought up the Liberian Learning Center as a global example of system change as to how non-government players can facilitate change beyond even what government can reach to. And while he was doing it, the Liberian delegation was sitting there, could not even say a word. You would have thought it would be the Liberian delegation that would trumpet. And the person admitted to me.
Champion,
He
yeah.
took the video, he sent it to me. He said, Leo, I was embarrassed that it was a Nigerian at the UN elevating the Liberian Learning Center as an example of the type of things the UN would like to see being driven. And the Liberian delegation were there. They did not even have it on. They had not even visited it. Never. They has not done anything there about it. So I just laughed and I told him, I said, thank God that other people, using it to validate you. But as we close here to our last point, I would just say another piece I've talked about, I'd like to hear your point on it, and then we can go to our closing, is one. Every time a government comes to power and put all these big plans, whether it was Unity Party, send the war in it, from Chatila to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to CDC, now to President Boakai. People come up with these massive plans and tell you what they would do. Liberia is the only country, or maybe in other African countries too, but one of the places where people can put a platform with no costing to the platform. People say they will change the education system. They will build kilometers of road, but they don't tell you in these plans that to do this will cost us 50 million. And you know what will cost us to say your platform costs 200 million or so. They just put these random grandiose ideas out there. And then anyway, I like to call it voodoo economics. A lot of people know me for that. I call it voodoo economics, where you just say you will do something, but when they ask you, how much will it cost? And you're saying all that in your country budget at $500 million a year. But you're saying all this BBT in there. So my question to you is, all the governments combined up to today's date, how can anybody change education with a $500 million budget? $500 million at the cost of a well-built hospital with all the equipment in it. That's what $500 million can do for you. So corruption is a problem. But even if there was no corruption, there is nothing you can do with $500 million that will solve Liberia's problem. So the question I will ask you is, should we call it a failure for any government who comes to power and say you will do this, but fail to raise the resources to do it, and then excuse yourself by saying the space was tight, the economic challenge? You knew it before you came there, because if you had said you would build 10 hospitals, right, and you costed it out, if you got your economists to get to work, and these things are easier to cost out. There are people who do that thing in their sleep. To say to build 10 hospitals like bro will cost you $20 million or so. You would have known how much money you need to raise as a government annually to be able to deliver on your promises. So for me, I've said, any government that put out a platform that don't know what it costs, and you just going around begging people to give you anything will be okay. You say, oh yeah, well, even small things we'll be able to start something small and just build something. You have failed, because the first test of leadership is to be able to determine what you want to do and what it would take for you to accomplish it. Well, I would like to hear your thoughts. And then
Sure,
we can go to our
that's a very great question. What is interesting is how much million did you spend to be able to erect this structure in Liberia?
$2 million. And the particular
$2
structure right now is 1.5. So the next phase will be coming up, but this current one is about 1. With all the equipment in it, with the solar and all the things, everything came up to $1.5 million.
Yeah. So with just $1.5 billion, you constructed a masterpiece for a lot of people to think about, and you're speaking about 500 million. So the first thing is that even 500 million is not being utilized in the right way to bring change to Liberians.
Yep.
So it's very concerning in itself. Is that how can we regulate public financing fit the actual objective and ambition of the crisis we have? Educational infrastructure is a very huge challenge in Liberia. Rethinking education by resource center is critical to be able to even combat the just crisis. There's something in social policy called the latent view and objective. That is the hidden unintentional view that you intend to achieve certain purpose with.
Yep.
The hidden unintentional view of a resource center is actually to get young people out of the street, get them inspired to be in a space to read, to expand their horizon, to be able to place them on the trajectory as other Africans and other nationals around the world who are far ahead of us. Their discourse is expanding beyond us.
Exactly.
This is the reality. You will only know that we are far behind if you obviously find yourself as a Liberian.
Yep.
And if you haven't had a chance to live from here to see how young people are ahead of us in different ways.
Yep.
So this is the reality. The point here is that governance in this service that does not fit the challenges of the current pressing challenges.
Yep.
Real current expenditure is very huge in our budget.
Yep.
Every year we have a budget close to $1 billion, and you spend $2 billion to erect this, or less than $2 million to erect this structure, and we're talking about $1 billion budget. So where's the budget going? That's the critical question we should ask. Salary expenditure is a critical part of it. The other aspect of it is non unknown budgetary allotment. The national security, the NSA currently play and there are policies in Liberia we must be able to think about, changing. The policy that says the National Security Agency cannot be audited is a very huge impediment of corruption in the country. You're spending 9 billion to 11 billion to 14 billion currently in the National Security Agency, and you say they can be audited. So where the money going? What kind of security crisis we have in the country? You'll be putting almost close to 10 to 14 billion dollars in a specific agency. So inherently, this country is built on the fault of extreme corruption, and there must be systemic, pragmatic solution of accountability process to change that corruption strategy to a space where we fit the context of what we want in Liberia. And again,
Thank you.
Leo, this is not unique to a specific
It's across the
political
board.
party.
It's
Unique
across the board.
to
Yeah.
a Liberian crisis. We all must be inspired by it. I
Yep.
always say this as possible. Some of us we did not support, but the very people who support the government, who today may disagree with this government, they should be the one hitting this government hard because they campaign for change. They demand that some leverage of change that should be done, and they have a right now to be able to speak up. If you criticize the government, it does not mean that you are saying you ascribe to any political party. You are legitimately questioning them to do them. In America, congressional leaders now are demanding Democrats to do more
Of course.
because they believe that Democrats must do more under the current crisis. They
It's
are not
true.
leaving a political party to say they are no longer Democrats, but they are demanding that the stand-up must be built in a way that it fit accountability process for the current political crisis in America. And we
Yep.
can talk about the same in Canada as well.
Yep.
So this is the situation we have in Liberia, and I think there's so much we can be able to do to change it. And I
Yep.
really love the fact that we are having this conversation because this conversation is important. This is how we should have a discourse on Liberia. One thing I'll be interested in is to talk about public policy solution. Maybe
I'm bringing you
at some
back.
point in
Don't
time.
worry. That just part one of the conversation here. We'll have to plan the part two
I'll
of this
be,
conversation.
I'll be very interested to talk about public policy solution because I have ideas.
Yep.
I have a lot of
Yeah.
ideas that I
What
think we
type of
should, and
policies
evident by
can
the
we
part of
can
what
we
you've
can we
done.
start to look at as the solution?
Of
Yep.
course,
Yep.
of course, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Thank you
No.
so much, Julie. I really
Yeah.
appreciate the time
No.
for this conversation, and
Yeah.
I really love it that we are talking about Liberian issues.
Yeah, no, thank you. And before we close here quickly, I would just like to say to everybody, thank you for joining. Those of you who are asking, just follow the page. We've been building this page gradually. I want to thank you all for joining today. Follow the page and you'll be alerted. We go every Saturday. For now, just keeping it once a week. Not a full-time job. Once a week, every Saturday, so you can get a chance to digest the things we talk about for the whole week when you go. But I would like to also just say to everybody in Liberia where we are, when you say it, people get upset and people challenge. We cannot be developing a country backwards. People keep telling you that, oh, the country will let them know. I don't want normal day. Normal day, we didn't have cell phone. Normal day, we didn't have internet. Normal day, who won't go back to normal day? We didn't have laptops. Sorry. Don't take me back to normal day because normal day will not fit. You will look crazy and stupid if you go back to normal day in 2025. Bring me to 2025 where we are right now, where people are using AI to do all kinds of sophisticated things, where people are using technology. So to our old people, no disrespect to all of you, but for you to be trying to take us back to normal day in 2025, I'm sorry. We have to move forward. Up to now, some of you even learn how to use Facebook. Yeah? You say Facebook that play thing. You know what Facebook can do around the world? Facebook can destabilize a whole country. Facebook can overthrow a whole government just by you. Facebook was the one who fueled the Arab Spring that you heard about. It was through social media that it got fueled. But I will let you give your closing statement. Wantoe Teah Wantoe, and then we will kind of close up. Just your parting comments.
I want to appreciate you, Leo, for giving us this privilege to talk about issues. I'm very proud again. Our parting comment is that we are all Liberians. This country will be better. We must be patriotic enough to invest in changing the narrative of this country. The other aspect is we are very excited about what we are doing with Scholarly Path. And again, hats off, Leo, to what you've done here with the Liberian Learning Center. And over the coming days, we'll be launching our Global Scholars Program. And the objective of the Global Scholars Program is, as I said before, Leo, is to be able to work with 150 Liberians to help them track their progress in 3 months to apply to fully funded programs and admissions to some of the top universities in the world. So it's a full educational advising leadership program that we're about to be able to start in the coming days, and I'm very excited about it. The other aspect is we had a launch yesterday. Hats off to everyone that supported us. Even people who politically disagree with us were very generous to the support to the work that we are expanding with this institution. And I'm incredibly excited to what we think that we can be able to achieve. Again, the diaspora is a critical hallmark. Leo, I always spoke about the idea that we need to be able to organize annual their events and think about how we can be able to collectively get Liberians in Canada to, have critical conversation about national development and investment. I think what you've done is a model of excellence that a lot of Canadians can see and also rethink investment in Liberia, because this is very important for all of us. And I think that's something that we should start thinking about. How can we expand that horizon, to other nationals to see how monumental it is for us to think about Liberia. It's nice to criticize, but it's also best to lead solutions. And I think that's what Liberia needs right now. So thank you, and I really appreciate the conversation. Look forward to talking more about policy solution and other things that are very important. And everyone who followed the show, also thank you. We appreciate it. I read all the comments, and I think it's very helpful. I always appreciate people who agree and disagree with me, because I think this is the hallmark of this course. You will all not agree, but there'll be areas and avenue where you agree and disagree on specific issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's Wantoe Teah Wantoe. I told you the conversation was going to be very interesting, and I think it was. Everybody, thank you for joining in. My name is Leo Nupolu Johnson here. It's another beautiful Saturday. I don't have much to say, but to say the country, we must shift away from preparing for every election and shift to nation building. The project of nation building cannot be subjected to the election of the next president, because guess what? Presidents will come and go, but the nation Liberia will remain. And some of the projects we need to undertake must transcend multiple governments. It must be a 40, 50-year horizon to change the country, and not based on the next election. So as you think about Liberia, don't think about it based on who will be the next president. Think about it based on what you need to do over the long period of time to bring about the change that you like to see. And don't tell me you can do it at government's job. All of us can do our part within your means. Determine what your means or your different means are. Determine what your sphere of influence is. Who do you have influence over? And do your part. If all you can do is to send your children to school and let them do well in school because you don't know who they become tomorrow, do that. If all you can do is to build one classroom study place for children in the community to study, do that. If all you can do is to build a latrine, a public latrine in a community that has no public toilet and people are defecating in the bushes outside, do that. Don't excuse yourself. And by the way, when you do that, it gives you the credibility to even challenge and criticize the government. But while you do that, ask yourself, what means do you have? Ask yourself, what influence do I have? Ask yourself, who do I know that I have influence about? And what can I do with those to impact Liberia? Whether it's through my children, through my family, through my community, through my church, through my school, whatever it is. Do your part. You cannot excuse yourself and say because it is a government job to build roads, so you will not do anything in Liberia since they didn't build roads. No, do your part. You are a Liberian. Your citizenship comes with two things. It comes with your rights. It also comes with responsibilities to your country. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will close by saying this to you. My country, Liberia, is too important for me to die for. So I will work smartly so that I can live long enough to impact it with all of the beautiful ideas and plans and opportunities that are available to me. No. I will not get angry and do something to die for my country. I will be disciplined and focused to work smartly so that I can live long enough to impact my country. God's willing. Ladies and gentlemen, have a beautiful weekend. Bye-bye.